election of the chair of the select board. Ethan?
I'd like to nominate Andy Watts.
Second.
Are there any other nominations?
Move the nominations be closed at this time. That's the best way to do it.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of Andy Watts as chair of the select board?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oh, yeah.
Then aye, Kendall. Is it thumbs up?
Yes.
Okay, 5 in favor. Andy, congratulations. You are the chair, and I turn the meeting over to
Turn the
you.
meeting over to me. Yeah, I think the first thing I said last year when I was elected chair was "yikes." So I'm hoping we're in for a good year coming forward here. Okay, I will now accept nominations for vice chair.
I make the motion that we nominate Tracy Delphia as vice chair of the Essex Town Select Board.
Thank you, Don.
Beat me too.
Thank you, Kendall. Thank you, Kendall, for that. Any other nominations?
I move the nominations for vice chair be closed.
Thank you, Don.
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. So do we need to vote on?
Yeah, I
the
forgot
motion?
to screwed up my one job.
Sorry.
Okay, so there's a motion to close nominations. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, nominations are closed. All those in favor of Tracy Delphia as vice chair, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. Congratulations, Tracy.
Congratulations, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thanks.
Excuse me, can I interrupt? Can we way to make Kendall a little louder? Is there I cannot Try it again, Kendall. Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and now we have the position of clerk. Traditionally, it has been typically been the newest member that asked to perform this function, but we happen to have 2 new members now. And so, yes, we will accept nominations. Or did you want to have a comment?
I didn't know if you wanted to tell them what the clerk does before you.
Oh, right. Yes. So, yes. So the clerk, yes, that's a good point. Clerk's responsibility, there's 2 primary roles that the clerk is expected to perform. One is to read things into the record when there's a document that needs to be read into the record, typically a resolution that we're approving or proposing. And also there's there may be something read at the town meeting for the about civil discourse. I forget what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is to sign the minutes for all the meetings. And so in times past, before we had electronic signatures, this clerk used to get a folder full of documents that needed to be signed physically, and then the clerk had to, kind of pass them around the table and try to get everybody's signatures before everybody left by the end of the meeting. But now I think most things are being done electronically. So it's largely just signing the minutes, and that's done electronically now as well.
Yep.
So it's responding to the emails asking you to sign off on the minutes. So Tracy, I saw your hand up before. Were you going to make a nomination or a comment?
I was gonna say, in keeping with the theme of the newest member, as the newest member with the shorter term, I would like to nominate Ethan Lawrence.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Don. Are there any other nominations?
Move the nominations be closed. Sorry.
All right, thank you, Don. For a second.
Second.
Thank you, Tracy. All those in favor of closing nominations, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, nominations are closed. All those in favor of Ethan Lawrence as clerk for the select board, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Congratulations, Ethan.
Thank you.
All right. So then let's move on to the rest of the agenda. Any agenda additions or changes from staff?
None from staff.
Okay, any requested additions or changes from the board? Okay, then we'll move on to public to be heard. Public to be heard is a time when the public can make comments to the select board about topics that are not on the agenda. If you'd like to speak during public to be heard, you can either raise your hand physically in the room or use the raise your hand feature in the Zoom meeting. If you're on the phone, we'll offer you the opportunity to speak at some point as well. I don't see anybody on the phone right now. If you'd like to address the board, please be brief, please be civil. Please refrain from using inappropriate language. Please address your remarks to me as a select board chair. Please do not attack other members of the public or town staff. If you are participating remotely, please keep yourself muted and your camera off to avoid distraction. And that's it. So is there anyone who would like to speak during public to be heard? See any hands in the room? Irene Renner.
Hear me?
Yes.
Terrific. I just wondered if town meeting television could give those of us who are in speaker view, the view of the room. We can't see anything. There's a big black screen and other people are asking me about that. So I'll pass that on. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for that, Irene. We'll see what we can do there. And then there's someone, it says Brad. Can you give your full name, Brad?
Yeah, Brad Kennison from Bixby Hill Road in Essex. When will the board be meeting? When will all of you be meeting in person at the town office? And is there a plan to discontinue Zoom?
I don't know that we're ever going to require everyone to be present in the room. I think the intent is to continue with hybrid meeting because the participation is significantly greater. Folks can join remotely. So Brad, I don't think we're ever going to discontinue that.
Okay. So what I'm driving, the select board is a governing body for the community, and you set the example for the community. It would be very, I think it would be the proper thing to do to resume the Pledge of Allegiance like we did prior to COVID. Is that a plan?
We haven't had a discussion about that. There's some equity concerns about the language that's in the Pledge of Allegiance, and we've brought this has been discussed previously, only briefly, but I think the intent is to wait for. Actually, we were looking to have an alternate. Pledge or statement, and that hasn't been resolved yet.
It's a sad day, I think, when you say that there's some equity issues with the Pledge of Allegiance. I thought we were a democratic society.
Well, there are a few phrases in there that some people take offense to. Okay, thanks, Brad. Patty Davis.
Yeah, hi, Andy. You know what, maybe it's me. That's why I'm always, not wanting to join any committee because I feel like I'm really challenged with computers. I just see a big black screen that says town meeting TV, and I see your head. But I don't see like the whole group. I don't, and I enlarged my screen, I'm on my
Yeah.
laptop.
Patty,
So
Patty, that problem's been highlighted to us, and I think it's being worked on.
Oh, okay. The other
Yep.
thing I wanted to say, Andy, is after living here for 6 years, I am so Sleepy Hollow Road and Old Pump. Emily's the old cross-country ski coach at Colchester High School lives on, I think it's Naylor Road. He just bought a house. He offered to let me park there, and a friend of mine, Eric Hovell, offered to let me park in his driveway. And I've been running 4 miles a day on the most amazing road. And so I won't bother you anymore about sex. I'm very happy.
All right. Thank you, Patty. Anybody else for public to be heard? Okay, let's move on to the first business item, which is consider approval of rules and regulations for orderly
Yeah.
conduct of business. Did I miss something?
Mary Post.
Another hand went up. Mary Post, I'm sorry. Mary Post? Okay, now I can hear you.
I don't against my friend, but I just want to say that I think we still have to work on Saxon Hill. I'm thrilled she's found a new running area, but I think we still have to really take a look at Saxon Hill, what's happening there. I would prefer that we try to turn it into a park for, for people to walk and run and play and not be afraid of other things going on. So just wanted to say, I'm going to say something. I'm for continuing work on Saxon Hill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Mr. Chair, can I say something about the TV over there? It's showing the same black screen town meeting TV on the computer.
Not what I'm putting out.
Yeah. I don't know if that's
With
what
the
they're
view.
seeing,
Yeah.
but I just saw it was black.
Can someone confirm what you're seeing, what is being shown on the television now?
Yeah,
Or the,
this is what they only show town meeting. Might be people who are watching our link as opposed.
On Zoom, we can see everything.
That do
Is
anything?
that better?
Not me on Zoom. I just see town meeting TV and black.
yeah,
I think Kendall Chamberlain.
whoever speaks gets highlighted to the
It
front.
might be your own personal setup for Zoom. If you go to the top right icon for view, set it up for speaker view or gallery view. That might help some people at home.
Thank you.
Oh. Yeah, everything.
Great.
All right.
Results.
Okay. Hey, thanks. Okay, let's moving on to first business item, consider approval of rules and regulations for orderly conduct of business. Every year during the reorganizational meeting, we do review the 3 policies that are here. Does anyone have any comments or questions about those policies? There are a couple of things I wanted to mention about the rules and regulations of orderly conduct of business. Question comes up many times about how the agenda is set. I want to make it clear that it does say in there that any person may request that a new item be placed on the regular meeting agenda by informing the town manager's office by noon on the Wednesday before the meeting, the agenda is published. That's a rule we tried to keep pretty steadfast with because the work it takes to get the package together for the select board and also to make sure that everything that is needed is prepared appropriately. The behind the scenes, the other thing that happens is that the town manager and the chair meet. Actually going to start inviting the vice chair to those meetings as well. And when you can. And so there's discussion about what should be on the agenda, what's been requested, what's ready to go, what's not. So that's how agendas are set. There has also been concern about interruptions. There's a sentence in there that says only the chair should interrupt any speaker, and only in the exercise of the impartial role of chair. And so I know there have been instances in the past where folks have been interrupted, and I just want to reiterate that that's inappropriate to do so. You can, there are instructions in here, you can ask the chair for permission to interrupt, which seems like an interruption, but then that's how it's written and how it should move forward. Another thing is side conversations are not allowed either at this table or in the audience. If new members of the board, if you have any question about procedure or anything, just raise your hand and we'll, it's best to have it as a public discussion rather than a whispered discussion with your neighbor or whatever. Just want to make that clear. There's comments in there about remaining civil and accepting all viewpoints, and also want to make sure that we're all members of the body, meaning the select board, recognize that we shouldn't be posting on social media, responding to email, or doing other things during a meeting unless it's actually part of the meeting. Other thing in the motions and votes, motions are not always necessary on every item. However, if we want to create policy, give direction, enact or enable or adopt a proposal or an ordinance or anything within its authority, it has to be done by a motion made, seconded, and recorded vote. We do sometimes carry forward with a consensus where we haven't actually had a vote, but then it's not an official position. I want to make that clear. And during a vote, abstentions are only allowed if you have a conflict of interest and you have to, let the board know prior to the vote that you have a conflict, which is covered in another section. And then there's a section right about not using devices during the meeting, which I think is kind of already covered before. But another thing is we have to have unanimous consent to go past 11 o'clock. It used to be midnight, now it's 11 o'clock. That's good. And we have had instances of people participating remotely who have not yielded to a request to the chair to stop speaking. And there is the final sentence of the policy does say, upon failure to yield to the chair, any person may be warned and then expelled from the meeting place. So it's in our procedure. Actually, I was after that occurred, I asked the Vermont League of Cities and Towns how to deal with this kind of thing, and they said if it's in your policy, you can do it, because folks should be aware that that's part of the policy and shouldn't be surprised when it happens. So I just wanted to point those things out. Any other comments about the policy? Any comments from the public? I don't see any hands. So, Tracy.
Move that the select board approve the rules and regulations for orderly conduct of business.
Thank you, Tracy. Do I have a second?
Does this have a date?
There's a date on there. Since there's no amendments to it this year, I'd say you don't need to update the amendment. You're approving it again.
Second then.
Thank you, Don. Second, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, motion passes 5-0. Thank you for that. Next policy is the conflict of interest policy. Do you have any comments, questions? Sorry, but I'm going to highlight some things too again. If you believe you have if you have or may have a conflict of interest, you need to identify it to the board in the public meeting before the topic is discussed. Anyone can request that someone recuse themselves, but there's no way for any individual to require another individual. So it's a personal choice of the person who potentially or does have the conflict, whether or not to recuse themselves. If you can explain why the conflict. If you have a conflict and but you can explain why you think you can act impartially, then you can continue with the discussion and the vote. But if you feel that you can't be impartial and can't explain why, then you need to recuse yourself and physically leave the room. And this policy actually applies to all of our boards and so forth. So you can't recuse yourself and then sit at the other side of the other side of the table in the audience. You basically have to leave the room and not be present for the discussion. Make those points clear. Any further discussion, comments, questions? Comments from the public? Okay. Motion. Tracy?
Move that the select board approve the town of Essex conflict of interest policy.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Don. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. Thank you. I'm very much regretting I didn't bring my water bottle. Okay, moving on to the communications policy. Any comments or questions from board members? Once again, I'm gonna highlight a couple of things. Unless a vote has been taken, there is no official position of the board. If a individual member wants to speak as an individual, this policy requires you to identify that is the case, that you're speaking about your own opinion, and it may not necessarily reflect the position of the board. If you know what the position of the board is, then you should state what that is, and then state your own opinion, and clearly identify it as such. There's a discussion in here about being mindful to prevent email and social media conversations from inadvertently violating open meeting law. That's why we can't have discussions in email, and social media also you need to be careful of, because you could in the same way that you could in a three-way email discussion, if there's a three-way social media discussion, that could be construed as a open meeting law violation. So that's why I never go to that Facebook page. Just be mindful of that. I think that it. Oh yeah, there's another thing in here that says that the First Amendment gives citizens the right to criticize government regardless of the quality or accuracy of the criticism. It's a weird thing that is perfectly legal for someone to lie about you as an elected official, and you can't do anything about it. It's protected speech. I think that's enough. Any other comments, questions?
I move that the Essex Select Board accept the communications policy as written.
Thank you, Ethan.
Second.
Thank you, Tracy. You said accept. Does it need to be approved?
As it is, I should say.
Approved. Okay. All right.
Sorry.
Okay with the amendment? All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. Sorry about all my talking there. Okay, now moving on to the next business item, 6D, introduction of proposed fiscal year 2023 water and sewer budget. Is that you, Dennis, Aaron? Both you guys? Come on up.
And we work collectively on the budget, so it's important to have both of us here, so when one of us forgets, the other one remembers. I won't say which one that's applicable to, but you know,
I forget.
it is what it is. Usually when we provide the water and sewer budget, the first meeting, we put it into the reading file. And this year we wanted to put it into the actual business items just because there are some new members to the board that we think we want to explain the difference and what goes into the budget, how we format it, where to find stuff. The intent would be the next meeting, there would be more detailed discussion. We're open to any questions you want to raise tonight if you've already looked at it, but the next meeting, we want to get into a little more of the detail of how we got to the rate and the budget and maybe the deeper questions. It is an enterprise fund, which is a little bit different from the general fund. It's when the board meets on it, officially, you don't actually recognize this, but you act legally as the board of water and sewer commissioners as opposed to the select board when you approve things, and approve the budget. You never take your hat off and say that, but that's legally under state law. That's what you do. Water and sewer budget is, like I said, it's our utility budget. It is an enterprise fund. We're collectively, I think Aaron and I are pretty proud of how we've been able to keep rates relatively low over time and still provide quality service. The budget leads to the rates, and in some cases, the budget is higher than the rates, and in this year is no different. The budget in the water department went up 5.6%, but the rate increase is 2.3%, 2.1%. And I can explain that tonight, or I can explain that later, but we're able to do that. It's not magic. It's just a question of the calculations and how that calculates out. We have proposed a corresponding increase in the water initiation fee, if you will, a hook-on fee, to correspond. We haven't changed that in a few years, and that we tried to raise generally in accord with the percentage that's in the water rates. Two items in the water budget, just in general. As I said, the increase is a 2.1%, but we did get a 4.26% increase from Champlain Water District. That's one of our major bills because that's where we buy our water from. And then increased cost to investigate water system losses and system infiltration. That's the two biggest dollar items in the water system. In the sewer system, it was a 6.7% increase in the budget and a 3.4% increase in rates. There, two items really stand out. There was a 10.38% increase from the village of Essex Junction in terms of the treatment plant, and again, increased costs to try and reduce the system's infiltration and inflow. The budget is set up in three components, and if you go into the budget data, which is the Questica piece of this, there's three components. There's a shared portion, which is kind of all the things that are shared between those accounts: employees, automobile costs, electricity costs, other than specific, like pump stations for sewage. So we lump those together into a shared cost. Some people take that in some rate structures and take that into almost a base rate that everybody gets. And then we also calculate those costs that are real specific to the water system, like purchasing water from CWD, and those costs that are real specific to the sewer system, like the costs from the wastewater treatment plant. We then combine them to come up with a total rate, and that's explained in the memo, how it goes from budget to rate, some history on what that budget's been, some of what our neighbors are charging. The hard part with the budget, and when you look at what our neighbors are charging and where we sit, is it seems like all those numbers are almost a year behind because everybody's doing it at the same time. So when we give you a proposed rate, everybody else is doing it at the same time. So we really can't give you what the other communities are doing yet. So we'll provide you with the rate we're looking at, but the other communities are mostly last year's rates. So that's just important when you're looking at that. In a general sense, we fall in the middle category of the water rates in Chittenden County and surrounding communities. We're a little bit higher on the wastewater end, but not a whole lot higher when you take a look at average rates. Some of them are quite high, some are quite low. So that's kind of the overview of the system. If you go to the Questica numbers, they're were also in your packet, you can actually see in the budget numbers, we try to explain in a little more detail what each one of those budget numbers are, why they were what they were or are what they are. And from that, we developed a budget. And that's, Aaron, you want to add anything, or
That's pretty much it. I will add that one of the other big components or costs to both the water and sewer is the system stabilization fund, which I believe for both this year was 160,000, both water and those are the three main big hitters: purchasing of our water and or treatment, appreciation of system, our assets, and hunting and searching for leaks and
we've been putting money into that stabilization fund for, well, it's in the budget, but I don't know, 10 or 15 years, and it's built up over time. And that's the money that we use to repair and fix the system. If we're replacing pipelines, it comes out of that. It's also allowed us to be able to move forward with some of our capital means projects. And that's kind of the next topic on the agenda we can get into on the next item. But it's allowed us to be able to move forward. The big thing coming up is with all the federal funds that are available. That fund that's sitting there is a great fund for us to use to get matching grants. And if we're going to do that, now is the time to go after those matching. We'll cover that in the next session. Any general questions in terms of how it's set up? Or
No, but I remember last year you brought forth this meter replacement, and I'm wondering how that's going. It seems you have a stockpile of them. Does that mean they're not getting replaced because we don't have the help to do it, or we don't have any that need to be replaced?
right now we have about a little less than 100 meters, residential meters to install. Those have, I guess, are kind of been the holdouts within the system. We're actively trying to keep door knockers and at least get these meters switched out, as many of them as we possibly can, to make that number more manageable. But moving forward, the next step is to actually utilize some of this data that we can collect. We can collect it at multiple times a year, numerous times a year, and then there are softwares. I know that our manufacturer of our meters, Neptune 360, is a software that we could use to implement to help us utilize some of that data, and then not only benefit the system, the department itself, also some of the residents. I know in the capital budget we also have a line item in both the water and sewer for a portal for our residents to go into, pay bills, look at their usage, look at if there's any leaks. That all kind of goes in. So we're kind of moving from the mass meter installation into the next phase, which applies.
And we continue to replace meters. I mean, obviously, even if we put a new meter in 8 years ago, they eventually wear out. And so we're continuing to go back and replace some of them. But the last 100 or so, 90 to 100, are really the hardcore. And some of it is physical, where people have redone basements. You can't hardly get at the meter. The meter's behind a wall that was built in their basement. When they did it, they didn't give any thought to that. They just built a very nice wall in an expensive house and really don't want to let us in to change the meter because it means taking apart their wall. I mean, that's at least one of them that I know, or a couple. And some people are some customers believe that we're from Mars, the same thing, and that we're going to wire their house and we're going to be able to tell everything that goes on in the house. And I mean, there's just some ridiculous things that go on, but we've had some of those, and those are difficult ones to deal with. And some we've been finding ways to work around, but they take time. So we're down to the hardcore ones that are not easy to resolve.
But none of these are actually leading to where you're looking for your water line.
No,
Just because the meters aren't hooked up.
Most of any leak detection abilities or opportunities we have with our water meters are for internal to their home, whether it be a leaky toilet or
they'll get a high
the kid
bill.
left the faucet on in the backyard, and
If we're going to find leaks in the system, it's going to be in the main lines. But one of the common ones is also between the shutoff valve at the street
Mm-hmm.
and the house itself.
Right.
And in a lot of cases in Essex, they're in sandy soils. And if there's a slow leak, it's
You're not gonna
very
see
hard
it,
to
yeah.
find. Yeah, we did find some. We had under leak detection this last year that Aaron put in place. We found a number, and some of them were significant paybacks to the town.
I think we found close to a total of 10 gallons per minute in leaks.
Wow.
And that's only in about a third of our system. Little loss of revenue. We're talking about 15, which basically paid for the whole leak detection. Consultants come in and do it with grants, and that what we recoup.
So part of our financial plan is to continue that over the next couple of years and then revisit again. And just because leaks will continue to occur. It's not like a one-time one and you're done. It's go back in a couple of years and start it all over and go through the same process again.
Any other questions?
Excuse me. I just have a short question. I think it's something that's really confused upon. I've received the question a few times, but the surplus that you guys build in for the 160,000 for water and sewer, that money covers emergency repairs, correct? So like if I'll give you the question short and sweet. So the question is from people is when there's a big break and you have to use municipal dump trucks to bring in stone or whatever. Mostly it's subcontractor because we don't do a lot of the big repairs. But the question is, where does that money come from? And my understanding was it came out of the surplus as two, it's two separate municipal. I know it's confusing,
a little bit
intertwined,
great.
but
We
they were
build
just
into
wondering where to.
we do build into the budget numbers for that kind of an occurrence. Okay, so that's in the operating piece of it. That's not in the other piece. But if we have to replace an existing asset, a good one that we'll get to later is a section of pipe along Sand Hill Road that's got to be replaced.
Yeah.
Okay, it's older AC pipe. It's underneath the state highway. It's the pipe is there because the state allows us to put it there, just like the power poles. If the state comes in to the power company and says, move the pole, they have to move the pole because they're given permission to put it in the right of way. We're going to have to replace an existing asset. Replacement of that asset would come out of that 150,000 we put away. Okay. What wouldn't come out of that is if we decided, for example, which we did a couple of years ago, we did a project in the fort to put a new water line through there. Some of that did replace water line, but some of that was considered new. So that's a question that we always go through with finance. Is it a replacement of a current asset or is it a new asset being added to the system? And in a lot of cases, the new assets that are added come out of impact fees that the developers pay. So we've got a kitty for that. And then we've got a kitty to replace the system. And the intent is over the life of the system, and these systems, pipes have a 50-year life. Another example, replacing an existing pump in a pump station.
Right.
That might be a quick $20,000, $15,000 to $20,000. Where does that money come from? That would come from that 150 because you're replacing an existing asset. And so we end up a lot of times working with finance. Okay, here's the bill. Which pot is it coming out of?
Right.
And most of the time they agree. Sometimes we get into discussions where we think it might be an asset replacement and they don't, so we work it out.
And it's usually the asset itself and not the installation.
Yeah, the installation, the labor cost might come out of our operating funds, but the actual piece may come out of that sinking fund, the actual piece of equipment. So it's a little bit confusing, and it comes back to what will the auditors allow you to take from that fund? And so that's why we always go back to finance and say, okay, what are the ground rules on this particular item that we have to deal with, and which banking account do we pull it out of?
But I don't know, Ethan, if your point is that it's the water rates that pay for all of that. It's only water users that pay for all repairs to
Yeah.
water systems. There's no tax dollars that go into that.
Yeah, there's no, if we had, for example, a case where there's a water break and where we're using our trucks to essentially bring in material, we would cost that against the water and sewer
To
department.
the town.
The same thing, we have water and sewer employees who in the winter will plow. Their salary for that plowing operation comes out of the highway budget, not out of the utility budget. So we're very careful about trying to separate those functions so the costs go into the right box.
The labor is coded as such, and then usually we track whatever type of materials.
Perfect.
Usually we haul out of a pit, so that's trying to calculate what.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I was just going to.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is Kendall. I was going to speak up and say that I have had a discussion this morning with the town manager about some things that I'm very curious about. I do see some opportunities for revenue enhancement in your department. I was going to ask you though, I couldn't find any information of how are your delinquencies looking? I know you've come through a couple tough years.
It's a good question. We've checked that. Again, that's not on our end. The financial piece of it is more with Courtney. We have checked with that. Delinquencies are actually pretty good. We do have the standard program the state allows us to, which we've backed off during COVID, but we'll be going back to, and that is if there's delinquencies, we have the ability to shut them off. We don't do it during the winter, but we do it with the spring water usage. The other thing is, I think during this time frame, finance has been very much proactive with working with the state program, where the state allowed funds to go to customers with those kind of delinquency problems. And so that's helped us reduce that delinquency account. I don't have a specific number, Ray Kendall, but Courtney will get that for us, so we can have that for the next meeting. It's a good question.
Okay, thank you.
And like the question that I had, I think you've already answered through email, but I want to bring it up in discussion here. Was one of the, you mentioned the fire suppression, water that's used for flushing hydrants or for extinguishing fires that gets hauled to a location that doesn't come out of a hydrant, is considered a revenue loss, but the relative to all the other revenue losses like leaks and so forth, it's a very small number. I think that's what you said.
And I had to check to make sure, so I did check with the fire department to make sure today, but the fire department building is metered. So when they wash their vehicles, or when they fill up at the fire department, it goes through the meter. So their tanks ready to roll are full of water that's paid through their meter.
Okay.
So that is accounted for.
Okay.
Now they roll and they
All
go out to a site. They've used up that water and now they're drawing off a hydrant. That's unaccounted for.
Gotcha.
If they go to another community, they may draw off of their hydrants, and that's accounted for water under the other community. And so it's a mixed bag in terms of how much that is, but the fact that when they come back to the station and they fill, and they do that for a couple of reasons, because sometimes when they're drawing, they want to ensure that their tanks are using, even within the tanks, the best quality water that's there. And so they will actually empty their tanks sometimes when they get back to the fire station and fill them with fresh water out of the hydrant. Not all the time, but depending upon what they see at the very parts of the system or where they're drawing from. They have ponds sometimes they draw from, and so the rural fires. They want those tanks clean and ready to go for the next time. So, but that water is all paid for.
Okay.
Yeah, the bigger losses come from losses in the system, leaks. We flush hydrants. Those are some of the bigger losses that we can't put a number to real accurately.
Okay. All right. Any other board questions? I see one couple of Kendall, your hands are back up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I actually just wanted to follow up on that when it comes to the fire revenue and everything. This is part of my day job. And I just want to point out that first I would say thank you to all of the existing water and sewer customers that are subsidizing the folks like me that are not on the system and paying for that fire water. And I would just like to ask if the customers of the water and sewer department are aware of that and are fine with that, or if they would like to pursue some kind of a fire fee from the town residents that are not on the water and sewer system, because there are a lot of customers that, you know, I'm not comfortable being subsidized. Fire protection is key. And as you said, that first water that's going to roll out the end of my road is going to come right from your system that somebody paid for. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's a good point. A lot of the customers in Essex, you know, I don't have an exact figure, but I can tell you roughly off the top of my head, probably 75 to 80% of the customers are in Essex are on municipal water. So, as opposed to some of the more rural communities where it's reversed. So most of our customers who may have a fire are on the water system. There are rural people on wells that obviously don't. And it's a good point. I think one of the things my recommendation would be in that regard for the future is to get some more data on that. You know, what's the record of the fire department? Where do they go? How many calls are here and there? And one of the reasons for that is quite honestly financial. If we were to do that, if the board, and it's not a bad idea, it's a good idea, but if the board were to do that now, that means that you would be charging general fund payers, tax base, fee towards the utility at a time when the general fund is going to have issues over the next couple of years just meeting expenses given separation. Whereas the number is small enough, it's not going to affect customers. I think it's a great idea, but I think you do the data collection, figure out what that loss or what that might be, and put that on the table when the general taxes have stabilized and you're better able to do that. Because I honestly think, that the board is going to be scrambling to find every dollar they can to keep taxes low in the general fund. And the last thing I think you'd want to do is throw in an additional fee under the general fund. If it's not significant and doesn't impact the water rates, it's something that needs to be done, but maybe postponed for a couple of years.
All right. Thanks, Dennis. Okay, I see one hand up from the public. Betty Poulin.
Hi, good evening. I just have a couple of general questions. First of all, I was just wondering if you could talk to the fact that we do have a minimum usage and why we have that. I know we've had that for a while. I happen to fall into that, which is good. It seems counter intuitive when maybe we're trying to minimize the amount of water people use. Along those lines, I was curious how many or what percentage of our households do fall into the category of falling below the minimum. And then I had a question about the minimum. Is it really an annual minimum or is it really a trimester minimum? And that's probably just getting too detailed. But for example, giving the new rates, if I fall below the minimum the first trimester and then build 63.33, and the second trimester I fall below and build 63.33, and in the third trimester I exceed the minimum, will you true me up for the year and only bill me the 190? Or will I be billed for the actual for that particular trimester? So those are my questions. Thanks for all your analysis.
I could answer some of those. As for in-depth billing questions, I would have to definitely defer to finance on that. But I did talk with Courtney today, and we do have 1,100 connections that do fall under the minimum usage. And they're billed 60 per trimester, so the full 180 in Courtney. But as for how we would work that, I believe that was a discussion at one time. Like you said, you're below the minimum for the first two, and then the third you use way too much. I don't know really how that works. I would defer to Courtney on that one.
So it is based on the trimester. So for the billing period, there is no year-end reconciliation. It is based on those 4 months usage. If you fall under the minimum, which is currently $60 per billing period, you get charged to $60. There is no real mechanism to go back and reconcile for the year without that being extremely labor intensive and an administrative burden on.
Sure. Yeah, I understand. I just, maybe it's better than to stipulate that it's really a trimester minimum and not an annual minimum, if that's in fact what it is. And, just an observation in terms of going to 190 versus even 189. And I know there's a lot of number crunching that went into that. 63 would be a round number. But, my other question that I'm not sure anybody can answer, because maybe it's been around for a long time, is why we have a minimum.
Yeah, I can answer that one.
Thank you.
Or try to attempt to. The minimum covers a lot of facets. For example, the water system that serves a community provides fire protection, and provides that fire protection whether you're in your house or you're out of your house, whether you're drawing water out of the tap or you're not drawing water out of the tap. That is, and I can give you an example, and maybe this is crazy, but someone owns a cottage on the lake and they move out to the summer. That water system, they're not taking a drop of water out of the Essex system, maybe for that period, but that house and that structure is still protected because that water system is there. We still have to have employees to go to work. We still have to drive vehicles. We have to flush the water mains. Those costs go on year round. So they're not specific to, oh, I'm drawing that 1 gallon of water out today. Why should I only pay for that 1 gallon of water? You're paying for the entire cost of operating a water system, which includes all components to it: hydrants, water lines, valves, because if those valves aren't checked and flushed and taken care of, and they don't work, you may not get water. So it's all part of that system. And so that was a way to effectively level the playing field so that everyone pays for the cost, for some basic fee for what the cost of that water system is. And that minimum, when it was set at 50% of the average family use. The average family use historically has been around 200 gallons, a little bit less maybe now, but around that. And so we've tried to keep it. I think the last few years, it's been less than $100. If you look at the actual cost, it's actually been, instead of 100 gallons, if you go back through history, it's been 93, 90, 87, 86, 86, 89, 86, 83, trying to keep it at least at about the 85 to 90% level, 80 to 90 gallons a day as a minimum to help defray some of those other costs that go into running the system. And that's why it was set up, and that's the system that's in place.
Right. It's like there are some utilities that have a daily connection fee that you pay, whether you use like electricity.
Right.
If
You
don't draw any electricity.
You can word it a
still
bunch of different ways. You can have a minimum, you can have a daily connection fee, you can have whatever.
Right.
We've decided, or the town decided, to call it that minimum fee.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you for explaining that to me.
Right. Thanks for the question, Betty. Patty Davis.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Dennis and Andy, of course, I got to talk to you, but I read all I read all the notes for this meeting about the water system. And I just want to say thank you for Dennis, for all the fact that you go through each pipe to see if there's any leaks or breaks, and the maintenance that you guys do to keep these pipes from bursting. You do preventative medicine on the pipes, and I read everything. It took me forever. It was like 111 pages, but I read it all, and it's definitely worth the money, what you do. And because why wait until our pipes burst and oh God, we have a problem. I'm glad we're on the preventative side of things with our water system. So thank you.
Thank you. I wish we were batting 100%, but we're not that good, because you still end up with breaks in different parts of the system. And unfortunately, one of the areas that is a concern for us for the future, and you can see that when we talk about the capital fund, is the 40th and Allen system. The pipes over there are 100 years old, and they have a 50-year life. And it's a component part of our system, even though a lot of it lies in the town of Colchester, because of the fact that the water system was deeded to us by the federal government when they left, and the town accepted the deed. I'm not sure everyone knew what that was about, but they did. So we have the deed for the water and sewer lines in the fort. They've actually been a significant contributor to the rates, which has helped us over time. So at one point, they were probably 50% of the flow from the town. Now they're probably 20%, but still a significant contributor. So they're a part of our system. We'd love to sell it to the town of Colchester for $1, but every time we ask them, they turn us down. They really don't want to go there. So.
All right. Any other questions? Margaret Smith.
Hi, thank you. Just a question on who should I see? Because now I have a question about my water bill, and I don't want to take up meeting time, but I do want to ask somebody about it. Who should I contact?
Contact Public Works.
Contact
us. 878-1344. You can talk to Aaron. You can talk to me. We can look at your bill and have finance look at the bill and see if there's an issue there, or try to explain if there's some things that are on there that maybe are incorrect.
Okay, thank you.
Margaret, before you go though, you need to remember that your bill is water and sewer, not just the water minimum that they were talking about earlier.
Okay, well, that explains part of it then. Thank you.
All right. There is no sewer minimum, right?
No.
All right. Thank you, Margaret. Any other questions? I don't see any other hands up. Is there anything you need from us, or is this informational?
No.
We're gonna
Just informational.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Move on to the next agenda item, which is capital water and sewer plan.
Yeah, this one, I would hope that the next meeting we have, we can get into a lot of detail, but again, just general. When we developed the capital plan for the town quite some time ago, we included all the water and sewer projects in that list. And it was like apples and pears, because the 2 cents in the general tax funds the capital program with grants that are associated with highways and stormwater and things like that. But it doesn't fund the stormwater, the sewer and water projects. These come out of some of it may be out of that set aside, the $150,000 that goes in. Some of it's from grants, some of it's from developer impact fees. So we decided to separate that out this year and create a separate, and for the future, capital plan for the water and sewer department, water and sewer. So that it's real clear to taxpayers that ratepayers are paying for this, grants are paying for this, and developer impact fees are paying for this, and not the general tax base. That being said, it's a fairly long laundry list of projects that really are needed. And some of them will probably lead to other projects that are needed. Some of them are in the form of investigations that may lead us farther to say, down the road, more money has to be spent. The reason why it's important this year is with the federal infrastructure funds that are coming, they're beefing up the SRF funds at the state. And I get this right, they're offered in the forms of loans, but the loans are being forgiven. Why they don't just give us grants, I don't know. But that means, I'll just give you an example. You have a project that's $1 million project. We would have to go to the ratepayers, taxpayers, to request a bond vote to bond for $1 million. They would turn around then, if the project was funded by them, by the SRF funds, they would turn around and give us a loan forgiveness of between 50 and 70%. And those funds would really not, with the financial status that the town is in, most of the projects that we need to build over the short term are fundable through either the set-aside funds or the developer impact fees. Now you got to try to explain that to the ratepayers. Please vote for this bond, because it's not going to cost you $1 million. It's going to cost you either $500,000 or $300,000, and it's really not going to cost you because we're taking out of the impact fees that developers already paid for the project. for future things. And it's at a time when the town is in the separation mode and taxes are going to be affected. And so it's going to be difficult, but it's a golden opportunity right now with those federal funds to go after them. And to do that, what we're going to be looking for when it comes down time for the board to vote is the permission to go ahead with some of these projects and get them designed and ready to go so that we can bring them forward, so we don't lose the opportunity that we're probably never going to have again.
Most of the money out there and projects that would be eligible would at least need to have a preliminary engineering study completed. And in the near term, over the next year or two, those are going to be the major projects within the capital budget as you look through. A lot of that is get the designs together, study projects.
And coupled with this, there's a drop dead date on these funds. And I've got to believe that every community in Vermont is trying to figure out how can we get at and use these funds. And you're going to need engineers to design the projects, which means when you make the phone call, are we 1 on the list or are we 25 on the list? And are we ever going to get to the point of getting them done? That's why I think it's important for us to work with the board to come up with a workable list and go after the projects so that we can get them at least to the point where we have a chance to go after those funds. Realizing that we may reach a point where it says we've got to stop for whatever reason. You know, we just aren't going to get those funds. But they're projects that are worthwhile doing. And in some cases, investigating to see if we really need a project or what that project is going to cost us.
All right. Any questions? Board questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Cameron, go ahead.
Would you like a motion to start that today? Because really, you are hitting the nail on the head. That's something that the town needs to move on right off the bat to get into that plate, just like Dennis just said. There's a lot of money there, and I'd like to see the town really start now getting some of that engineering and ready to go so that you can get in there and get that number one. Just my opinion. Thank you.
Thanks, Kendall. Anybody else? Go to the public. Patty Davis.
Are these SRF funds just this year because of all the money being thrown at us, Dennis and Andy? Or is that why you're saying we got to get these engineers? I hear what Kendall just said, but are these SRF funds only this year?
No, they're funds, as I understand the process, and it's some of that's still being worked on, but those funds are funds that are coming from the Federal Infrastructure Act, and they're channeled through the SRF program, and they'll be available for a number of years. I'm not sure of the exact drop dead date is, but we've got some time frame to do it. And I think I would love to be able to say, let's go do everything, but I think it is important for us to talk to the board about each of these projects, you know, not 2 hours worth, but enough time so you understand what we want to do and why it's important and that part of the community it may impact. And then I think that if we get that okay in the night that you go ahead and approve, or hopefully approve budgets and give us a go ahead on the capital plans to move forward. It's not that we're going to spend the money to go and build the project, but to get moving on it, that will give us enough lead time to get and we've already talked to some of the companies and engineering firms to get them lined up so we're ready to go. But I would hate to pull that trigger until the board's looked at what we've got and said, yeah, that's fine, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked with some of my peers out in the private sector, and they're queuing up fast. Will be.
Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, just timing wise, to put a bug in everybody's ear, we'll have a election in November and another election next town meeting in March. So those are kind of the benchmarks that we'd be looking at as far as getting things moving and bringing it to the select board and the community with those dates in mind as opportunities to have a vote.
Seems far away. started.
Maybe August. I can check. Is there a? There's probably a primary this
Primary,
year. Yeah, you would
August,
know
yeah.
as well as anybody done. Yeah.
There's a primary in
We
August.
might have an August opportunity too.
Yeah, the challenge there though is we won't yet have had any budget discussions for the first year after separation, right? So there's going to be
Correct, but the way Dennis and Aaron are talking about it, it doesn't involve.
right.
It's a vote on the bond, but it
Yeah,
doesn't actually involve.
I know, but it, right,
It's,
zero.
it's got to be
it-
carefully
it's
explained.
gonna be-
The lawyers have to do a good job of wording it so that everything's clear, nothing's hidden. Here's where we're going,
Yeah.
and enough fact sheets and enough discussion so people understand that this is a good thing. That this is a time where we've been able to collect funds that we can now use, and it's not coming out of today's pocket. It's actually, like I say, most of it's coming out of impact fees and other costs that have already been saved. It's a good position to be in. It's just, we have to explain it correctly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Ethan.
Just like to make a quick comment. I think if we, really, like you're saying, plan this out and word it correctly, and then, possibly looked at holding an informational meeting or two informational meetings, might be a big help to really drive home the point. So,
Yeah.
So Margaret Smith, I see your hand up. Is that a new hand or is that a residual hand from your prior comment?
Sorry, brain cramps.
All right. Bruce Post.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just a question on the bonding and the timing of it. I appreciate the fact that we're all learning some of you are learning on the job. I'm learning in my chair here in the office. When would a bond vote be triggered? Only when we've been guaranteed receipt of funds? The state says, yes, you can get $1 million. And before we can get that $1 million, do we have to have the bond vote?
As I understand it, we have a project, for example, that's moving forward, that's kind of sitting. We know it's going to cost. And that's one that's already almost 95% designed. In order to get the SRF funds, you've got to produce evidence that you have the local funding through a bond vote. And that's been my argument all along, is if we have the local funding, then why the heck do we need a bond vote? Because we've already got the money, and if the select board approves it, why? It's because it's tied to how those SRF funds were set up, and they can't give it to us as a grant. It's got to be a loan forgiveness. So you've got to have a loan to qualify. So we do have to go for the vote before we actually know that they have got that project. We can tell where the project is. We can get all kind of indications on their priority list, but there will not be a letter from them saying, if you vote, here's the money. It's going to be vote, here's the money.
May I follow up? May I follow up?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so the state has got this pocket of money. You've got a project. We bond for it in anticipation the state's going to give us money, correct? Is there a scenario that's possible that we vote yes on a bond and we don't get the money from the state? And then are we obligated, having voted on a bond and the state hasn't funded that project?
There's two ways that you can do that. One is the project may be valuable enough and there's enough fees that have already been collected that you could just build it and pay off the bond from funds already collected. That, to me, would not be a wise thing to do. It may be that what you would do is not construct the project, or at least not in that time frame, and delay that project until you can get raised on that priority list and then do it. I don't believe just because you vote the bonds, you don't have to start the process selling those bonds and becoming encumbered with that until you reach the point where you take that action. Now, that's something we've got to check with attorneys and the bond counsel and all that. But I think that's the way it works. So, it's kind of a crummy position to be in, because in my view, we have collected these funds. We could use that money. If it was a grant, it'd be easy. In this world, it's not easy.
And I got to imagine, Bruce, that a lot of communities are going to be struggling with this as well. moving forward. So that I'm sure the league will probably give us more guidance as this rolls out on wording of the bond or how we proceed further. But I like I said, I think we're going to be with the rest of the communities trying to scratch our heads and figure out how to get this done and address your concerns.
Yeah, I appreciate you thinking about it. I just don't want to get caught in a catch-22, you know, it's such an interesting timing issue, an obligation issue, and then an implementation issue. All these moving parts hinged on a bit of uncertainty. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bruce.
And one last comment. The answer might, just throw out, the answer might lie in how you word the bonding. If that bonding is tied to the award of SRF funds, and again, I'm not a bond counsel, I don't know how to word it, but if the bonding was correct, you might avoid that ambiguity, that it's one tracks with the other. And that's something we haven't reached that point of checking that yet.
Yeah. All right, thanks. Any other questions or comments? Is there anything needed from us tonight? Is
no
another informational? Okay.
Thanks. Appreciate you taking the time.
All right. Great. Thanks.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, yeah, thanks. Moving on to the next agenda item, consider appointing representatives to the Tri-Town Sewer Committee. Who's going to speak to this?
That will be me. So for many years, the town has benefited from Jeff Carr being its representative on the Tri-Town Sewer Committee. That's the committee that works with the Village of Essex Junction and the town of Williston on oversight of the wastewater treatment plant. But Jeff has moved out of town, so he had to step down and resign. So there's an opening on the board, and looking at the guidance from the original governing document for Tri-Town. Each of those municipalities appoints 2 select board members or their appointed representatives. So typically it's been Jeff Carr, the manager, representing the Tri-Town from Essex. I'm happy to be one of the representatives, although if there are 2 select board members, that's fine as well. You're also in good hands with Dennis and Aaron as the staff representative and alternate. It is a position where our recommendation is we have somebody who has a bit more technical expertise, whether it's in the field, with municipal operations, economics. Jeff Carr brought pretty much all of that. So, but to have somebody from the select board who can speak for the town on behalf of the town, and if there's any interest and expertise on hand from 1 or 2 of you, great. And again, I'm happy to be one of those appointees if there's only one of you who wants to step up or is able to step up.
Chairman? I think it would be great if Greg continued, but I also think it'd be a perfect position for Kendall.
Kendall, any comments, any thoughts about that?
My only hesitation to do that is that I am not a current water and sewer user, but if there is no objection to that, I could probably fill that role, yes.
He does have the expertise.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it actually makes it certainly less of a conflict of interest if he's not a user of the water. if there's a concern there at all. Anybody have any concern with doing it?
I don't have a concern, but I have a question. Is it do we just need one, or do we need 2?
We need
so we could do
we
Greg
need
and
2. It doesn't
Kendall.
have to be Greg though.
Well,
If there's another select board member who's interested in doing it, speak up. Okay, hearing no other, then do we need, I'm assuming you're looking for we need a motion.
I make the motion that we appoint town manager Greg Dugan and select board member Kendall Chamberlain to be the representatives to the Tri-Town Sewer Committee.
Thank you, Don. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Kendall, I think you stayed muted through that. Did you say yes?
I just say yes. I'm good. Aye.
Aye. All right. All right. So motion passes 5-0. Great. Thanks, Kendall, for stepping up for that. And thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Oh, you're waving. I thought you were raising your hand.
Oh, no.
But
Right, guys, thank you.
yep, take care. Thanks, guys. Okay, the next agenda item, I am going to turn the gavel over to Tracy.
So at a previous meeting, I had sort of asked for the select board's blessing to meet with Greg and Marguerite around committees, reappointments, things of that sort. We did meet. Tammy joined us as the person who reaches out to folks whose terms are expiring and seeing if they wish to continue. Most terms do expire on June 30th each year. And for the past few years, we've done reappointments for those who are already serving on the consent agenda due to time constraints. But with the end of shared management, we should/will have more time to take that up during regular business. Even though the interviews were, so kind of the standard questions, I think that we can approach that by having a standard list of questions. Recently, we have used a standard list of questions that are more informative about the candidates. So essentially, we have two options in front of us. We can continue with the simpler, more time-efficient consent agenda reappointment, or we could have those wishing to be reappointed come back in front of the select board for interviews and also advertise those positions. If I may insert my own opinion here, I think that that's the way to go. If we're not advertising positions, we run the risk of becoming stale in the pool of volunteers that we have. On a personal note, I got involved because I saw a vacancy being advertised for the zoning board, and that's how I got here at this table. Some could argue that that's a good or a bad thing, but it really opens that first door, if we're truly interested in inclusivity, for people to be involved and widening our horizons as far as opinions and really leveraging the expertise that exists within our own community. Any questions?
I have a question, but I do have a comment to add to that. And I think it's a good idea that we don't keep renewing the same people, because then people that might be interested are going to say, why bother? They're just going to renew the same people. So I think this gives us a broader outreach for people that may be interested in different positions, different boards. So I like that idea.
I just have a question. Is there a standard for I'm gonna say another word right now, but is there a standard for the the period that they are serving on these commissions, or is it year to year? Is there like 2 years terms on these?
I believe Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, most of the boards and committees have 3-year terms. The planning commission is the only exception that comes to mind. They have a 4-year term.
And Greg, if I'm not mistaken, those are staggered, correct?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So there's we alternated. So for a 5-person committee like yourselves, there's 2 seats that are 3 years, then another 2 for 3 years, and then 1 for 3 years. So that there's rarely total turnover unless mass exodus from town for some reason, something like that. But
When were these terms like adopted or put in place, just from the beginning, or is it something that was voted on? And I guess my question or comment here would be, would it make more sense to have a spectrum across the board, whether it's 2 years or 3 years, have them all the same per se? As we begin to reappoint these positions as they come up, not change everything completely, but.
I'd have to check the charter as far as the planning commission terms. The rest of them are all bodies that were created by the select board, and so they were created, that's when the select board said it's going to be a 3-year term.
Any other questions, comments, discussion? Kendall, did you have anything?
I would support your approach to it. I think it's important that even if you have only one person that wants to renew, that you put out an advertisement. And I suppose it could be the board's purview if they wanted to interview that person or not, if it was just one person. But I agree that an advertisement like that has to get more interest.
And oh,
I'm not used to raising my hand. Yeah, I agree, Tracy, and I think I really like the idea of having a list of questions to pick from, kind of thing, because we, it's a little awkward when we have somebody come in and nobody has any questions, and we say, thanks, the only comment they get is thanks for volunteering, and then I think it'd be good to have, and it also with people who've been on who are being reappointed or being considered for reappointment, I guess I should say, to ask them how things are going, whether there's anything the select board can do to help them, those kind of things. Maybe, I don't know if we have a different set of questions or another subset that we could ask for reappointment just to get feedback.
good idea. Margaret?
Yeah, I just wanted to add sort of to some of that discussion. I think there's sort of a short-term thing we're looking at here because it's coming up in June, and then kind of a longer, bigger picture as we sort of see how this goes. But I think there's also an opportunity here. I know I've heard from a few different board members over just the last few months even about kind of looking at what the committees do, getting them to interact, know what other committees are doing. These are volunteers. They don't have lots of, you are all like, you don't have all the time necessarily to read every other committee's meeting minutes. And so are there ways here as well, maybe even while you're doing those appointments, to have those committees be able to be in together and be able to listen or I mean, if that's something where you're talking about reorganizations of certain committees, that's where the term limit, what are their missions, what are their terms, those things come in to play at that time. I don't know that you need to address all of that before June this year, but I do think, that could be something you could also glean from when you have these interviews from committee members, of asking them, is your mission too big? How are you at, like, how can we help make this, doable if it's not, or things like that. It can be a two-way kind of thing as well. If you get, some, I don't know that they need to be done at the same time, but that I think is something else to think about as well, is just to get that feedback and, find ways to do that, whether that's in a regular meeting or you have a subcommittee of you all or something like that to look at that. But I think there's opportunity here as well, just for getting, new voices and perspectives per chance, but also hearing from those who are here and have that institutional knowledge and want to continue to help make it, even better and kind of work together a little on those different committees or stuff like that. So.
Sort of like, what have you accomplished? What do you wish you had accomplished? And what do you look forward to accomplishing?
Right. Yeah. And that's different for each committee.
Right.
That's gonna change. So, and is there things that, as this board we could do to help that or whatever, and get that communication easier for them between each other. If there's ways we can ease that, either as staff or whatever, to have that. But
there are many layers to the onion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just had a quick thing pop into my head when you had mentioned that. As I know that the planning commission is part of the charter or possibly part of the charter. If the select board appointed committees are under discretion of the select board per se, I don't know, I don't know this, but is there a process that we have that once a year we ask the chair or the lead of the committee to give us a progress report or just come talk to us and say, hey, this is what's going on and these are the important things that we're facing right now or whatever. Just maybe we could word that in there in this reconstruction to have a follow up yearly or even every 6 months or however it feels fit to have that feedback, because then maybe we could be more proactive as a whole board to sustain these goals that we have as a community. So,
and that's definitely something that we talked about. We're just focusing on the short term, but I think the overall idea is to come back with how we can increase communication, not only between this body and the committees, but also between the committees themselves. To really foster those ideas and identify where those overlaps exist and where we can, leverage sort of more people to meet the same goal.
Madam Vice Chair, do you want a motion?
I would like to see if there's any public comment first. Patty, I see you have your hand up.
Oh, yeah. Well, I forgot to take it down, but I'll speak up because I was really interested in what you had to say. When you applied to for the zoning, Tracy, in South Burlington, you were obviously very interested, and it sounds like you attended meetings. And did you apply just because there was a vacancy and you attended a lot of meetings? And you wanted to contribute, but did you really feel qualified? That's the thing. That's my question. I think outside people that are very interested but admit that they have not, jumped on the learning curve. They don't know all the vocabulary and just all the laws. And people like me feel like I really need to know. My background is in medicine, so I have no zoning experience, for example. So I guess my question to you, Tracy, is did you have zoning background when you applied to this spot?
When I was speaking about coming to Essex and applying to zoning, I had previously been on the South Burlington Select Board, so I had that experience coming into it. So it was a focus of something that I was already familiar with and had at least some semblance of expertise in.
But when you applied to the position in South Burlington, do you, is that your background? Like I'm, say I was interested in zoning, for example, but my background's medicine. So, if you guys interviewed me, I have absolutely no background. So why would I be a candidate? So I guess my question to you is, when you applied to the South Burlington position, did you come from, before you even got this experience, how did they pick you? Did you have that background, or did you come from a different background?
I can't really speak to why the board selected me, but being an IT professional with various regulations and policies and being sort of a technophile, it was definitely in my wheelhouse, and that's why I was interested.
Well, you're great. I just, sometimes people may be interested in something, but yet we hesitate to apply because we're like, oh my God, I'm not an architect, but we want to contribute. So we go to the meetings instead. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that. Thanks.
And the hope is that this will open up doors for other people. Bruce, Post.
Yeah, I certainly like what you're doing. I think it also, I'm picking up on something Ethan said. I think it's very important for both the board and the residents to have an opportunity to have oversight over these commissions on a regular or semi-regular basis. If someone comes in, they want to be reappointed to planning or something, for instance. But there should be an opportunity for the board to ask what is happening, and for the public to come into that meeting and say, well, here's what we're experiencing in dealing with the planning commission, or dealing with the trails commission, or dealing with economic development. I worked in Congress, and that's one of the poorest things we ever did was any oversight. And when I was on the board, I don't think we really did any oversight per se. We would have people come in and we'd interview them. But I think a structured oversight process helps the board and also helps the public who have concerns or don't fully understand something, and then get some feedback, rather than having it done at, public to be heard, which is not the kind of venue that you want to do that thing. And also not having them have to go before a commission that they think really needs oversight, but go to that commission and raise their concerns. They have that opportunity, but they should also have it with the board through a structured oversight process. Thanks.
Your point is well taken, and that will be on the agenda going down this road.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, any other discussion from the board? And with none, I would entertain a motion.
Not sure if I can do this. I'm looking at this. I make the motion that we. Sorry, Tracy. I thought I had this. That we any opening that comes on any board is advertised is not an automatic renewal process. That's not what I really. Do you want or help people? I know what I had it and then I didn't have it, so it's like, make the motion that we don't automatically reappoint positions on current boards, that everyone will interview for any open.
Correct. Does that meet your
Does that
needs?
work?
That works.
Thank you. I knew I had it and then it wasn't there. Okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, final discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Got to vote. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. With that, I will turn it back over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. Okay, next agenda item is consider approval of select board meeting schedule. Any comment needed there?
It's a schedule, proposed schedule laid out for you in the packet. It's sticking with the first and third Monday of the month. Exceptions are listed in the packet due to holidays in some cases. In a couple instances, September and July. The select board has traditionally met just once that month, so looking to go back to that. Hopefully things will calm down a little bit now that we're getting past the merger and separation discussions, which had taken up a lot of time and extra meetings in the past couple of years. So that's what's before you right now. It is proposed at 6:30. I know one member at least has brought up the possibility of a later start time. So staff is fine either way. That's really up to the select board about what time you want to start. Otherwise, happy to take questions on what is proposed. I should point out the budget day is not in here. We are tentatively looking at doing another all-day budget day in November, like we did this past year. But we need to flesh that schedule out a little bit more, and when we have a proposed date for that, we will bring it back to you for review to take a look at it. So for now, it's kind of just the straight first and third Monday. The other thing not in here is joint meetings with the trustees. The idea is to bring that to both boards when you meet your joint meeting in April to figure out what schedule makes sense for that going forward. And with that, I will take any questions.
All right, the other exceptions you got in here are holidays are moved to whenever there's a holiday on a Monday, it's moved to the Tuesday of that week.
Correct.
Okay, any comments or questions? Kendall.
I'm comfortable with your 6:30 as long as the board is comfortable with me zooming in. I got to be honest with you, this saves a lot of gas money. Just be straightforward. And I do have a prior commitment on Mondays. But if you moved it to 7, I could probably, in a lot of cases, make it as a person.
Ethan.
I am perfectly okay with, I don't want to speak for Kendall, but if you're okay with staying in your area and not driving, I'm perfectly fine with keeping the meeting at the same time and being comfortable with Zoom. I don't want to speak for anybody else, but personally, I'm up very early in the morning and I have two young kids, so I hesitate to move the meeting back any later. If we did, I would recommend that we maybe shorten I know it went from midnight to 11, but I would ask if we started at 7 that it ended at 10:30 because I'd rather start sooner than later.
Turning it on both ends there, yeah.
That would be my recommendation if we move the meeting to 7.
Any other comments, concerns?
I like it at 6:30 because, well, and maybe we won't have these ungodly late night executive sessions, but just sorry,
Yeah,
it just makes it
yeah.
easier too.
Yeah.
I'm just stating a fact. I'm sorry. It's a late night when you're.
Yeah, for years and years, the meeting started at 7:30,
I remember.
and part of that was because, well, it was I don't know. I guess it was that way when I joined, and then it stayed that way partly because a couple of us couldn't
I remember.
make an earlier time. But yeah, I'm okay with 6:30 if Kendall is. You know, I guess
Unless Kendall doesn't mind being remote. I mean, it'd be nice if you could be in the room with us. But possible.
from a staff standpoint, is it a concern to have it adds a little more complexity to executive session discussions?
Yeah, we can.
But
I think
we've
that's
managed
all
that.
manageable.
Yeah, we've managed that in the last 2 years. So. Okay, what you get?
I'm now working in Montpelier on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so I would rather go to 6.
Oh.
Second.
So I think 6:30 is a very good middle ground.
That work.
All right, and then let's see, is there anything else in here that's? I don't think there's any other concerns I have.
And I'm sorry, I missed what you said about joint meetings. We're not doing that tonight.
No, we'll bring something to you at the joint meeting this month. So both boards can discuss that together and figure out what makes sense for both of you.
Yeah, it needs to be a joint decision when we're gonna have joint meetings. So. But yeah, if we can get, and we'll see the proposal before we get to the meeting. So.
The other thing not on here is staff have talked about wanting to do a strategic planning session with the select board sometime this spring, so that's not listed here. As we get a little bit more into that, we can reach out to you about scheduling and see if it makes sense to do an evening at some point or half day on a weekend. But we'll not shown here, but put that on your radar as well.
We did that on a Saturday at the rec.
Past couple of
Maple
years,
Street,
past
didn't
couple of
we?
times we've done it on a Saturday. Yeah.
All right. Any other? Ethan?
I'd like to make a motion.
I don't know if there's any public comment. Any public comment? I don't see any hands up at this point. All right, Ethan, go ahead.
I make the motion that the select board approve the proposed meeting schedule for the year of 2022 to 2023.
Thank you, Ethan.
Second.
All right. Thank you, Don. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. All right. We'll write those all on the calendar. All right. Okay. So next business item is discussion about select board representative on Essex Best, building equity, solidarity, and trust. This is not a select board appointment. It's the manager does the appointments. It's not a select board based committee. But the question is whether anyone would like to volunteer.
And maybe Marguerite can
Say
talk a
more.
little bit about what best is and what the commitment would be.
Yeah. So currently the full group meets quarterly. So we've already had our one meeting in March. So there's 3 more there. And also currently there are 2 sort of subcommittees of Essex Best. And one sort of deals with the safety policing, what that looks like in the community. And then the other one deals with representation and leadership and what that, part looks like. And so those recommendations that Essex Best brought forward February, I think it was, that's kind of, those are the 2 subcategories that those subgroups are working on, and then they come together. So it would be 3 more meetings for the full group this year. And then depending on kind of which subgroup, in this case, Patrick used to be on the representation and the leadership, which is that's kind of the idea, because that one has to do with thinking of, having the community involved with strategic leadership planning for, the select board and having that role there. And that's also the one that currently Raj for the trustees sits on. in that sort of subcommittee as well. And that's just to have that voice, have, one of the elected officials from these governing boards be there and have a voice on that, and also be able to hear from the community members directly, that kind of thing. So those meetings aren't as set in how many there will be, but they happen more often than the Essex Best kind of full meetings. So usually it's between the two Essex Best meetings, we'll probably have, 2 of each in between those. So, and again, it sort of depends what part you're involved in. Sometimes we meet in a little bit of smaller group to get some more stuff done and then bring it back to the big group. So, but probably, it'd be 3, 6, maybe 8, moving forward. And of course, as you can, if you can't come to one or something like that, that's goes. But that would be, I would say, probably on the more max side. But again, it's a little bit hard. They are trying to figure out what the recommendation is to bring forward for next year. So it might be that it becomes more labor intensive at some.
Thanks. Anybody want to step forward?
I do actually, but if somebody else would like to, very interested.
I support that. I was gonna say, if nobody wants to step forward, then I will gladly take that opportunity. But I fully support Dawn and her retirement.
Taking that away.
Anybody else? So it's, again, it's still Greg's decision who gets appointed. So, right.
Don will be in touch.
I think you may have an answer there. Yeah. Okay. All right. So moving on to consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Don. Do I have a second? Thank you, Tracy. Any further discussion?
I just have one question. Does the consent agenda involve the liquor licenses?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, I had asked the town manager a question about that.
Yeah.
And I just wondered if that was the affirmative.
I have an answer for you. I'm not sure which affirmative you're looking for, but quickly to just fill in the rest of the board. Kendall asked if we looked at if tax payments and water sewer payments are up to date for applicants. And Kendall, I apologize. I did get an answer and then I got distracted and forgot to get back to you. So typically, no, we have not been looking at that. In this case, the town clerk did have an opportunity to look into it. For the liquor licenses, all the applicants are renters, but she checked the property owner. Everybody is up to date on their tax payments and water sewer payments. So if in the affirmative, yes, everyone is paid up.
Thank you. I do think that's important.
All right. Thanks, Kendall. Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Motion passes 5-0. Reading file. Any board member comments? And for the new members, this is just the time you can say anything you want about, This is the board members' version or portion of public to be heard. So if there's something you want to say that's not on the agenda, you can talk about that, or you can talk about anything that's in the actual reading file.
I do have a question about that letter from the agency. Does that mean they're not going to check out if there's a violation of speeding on that road?
No, they are.
They
They received it, and they're acknowledging that they received it, and they're going to start their process on their end.
Okay.
Yep.
But so they can start it before they meet because they didn't even have a meeting date. I mean, that was what confused me. Is that it looked like they weren't even going to decide that until they had a meeting to decide if they were going to actually check into it.
Sorry, I should reread it. I read it.
Maybe I read it
quickly, and I
wrong,
thought
but-
that they were going to move ahead with it. Let's see.
It was near the.
I think it's in the second paragraph where it starts to say that they are going to take matters and further evaluated and addressed directly by V-Trans. I don't know if that speaks to your issue about enforcement, but I think the regulatory issue was set by the traffic committee. And
What's see down here where it says a date? That third paragraph, what that last line say? A date to something.
Yeah.
Don, I'm reading it in that second paragraph, about halfway through. It says, to address the speed limit, the traffic operations will conduct a traffic engineering study as required by state law and will forward a recommendation to the Vermont Traffic Committee, who makes the final decision. That's when the traffic committee meets 2 or 3 times a year.
Okay.
So they will get a recommendation from the
Okay.
traffic advisory, traffic operation.
We'll get an invite to that.
Okay, thank you. I was like, I couldn't decide if we are going to do something.
So the speed study would make the recommendation to the state traffic committee.
Correct.
If they want to change the speed. Understand. I travel that road daily as many others, and people are crazy.
Any other board member comments?
And just for clarification on that same item, it states you'll be notified of a recommendation 2 to 3 weeks prior to the traffic committee meeting. Will that be publicized so that members of the community who wish to go can do so?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
All right. I wanted to recognize this is the first meeting for Ethan and Kendall. Welcome.
Glad to be here.
Congratulations, and yeah. Hope we have a good year. And thanks for stepping forward to run for your positions. And congratulations and welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have you.
Thank you.
Could I just make the general note that I think the sound remotely for the select board meeting has been very good tonight.
Good. That's channel 17 or Town Meeting Television that gets the credit for that.
All right, great. It actually sounds pretty good in the room here too. And maybe it's a fresh battery in my hearing aid. I don't know. All right.
Hearing no other discussion, Mr. Chairman, I make the motion we adjourn.
Thank you, Don.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ethan. It's a non-debatable motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, we're adjourned.